Hey everybody, the game we are taking a look at today is going to freaking melt your mind. Because if you thought Stockfish could never get taken down in just 14 moves, well, your worldview is about to get completely shattered as this mystery opponent, whose identity I will reveal at the end of this video, launches an attack with the white pieces that is so vicious that even the great Stockfish is powerless to stop it. Chess games of this caliber can have quite a humbling effect on us mortals. But enough said. Let's get into this amazing game and see just what went wrong for Stockfish so early on. So we have a well-known theory up to this point. French defense with the typical c5 thrust from Stockfish challenging white's pawn wedge in the center. Knight c to e2 now, not the most common. Knight to f3 developing a piece is a little more popular, but white wants to get in the early c3, back up the d4 pawn. Okay, knight c6, here's c3, bishop e7. Normal stuff, and now f6. Stockfish really going after that white pawn center at the cost of weakening the king side a bit. You know, Stockfish has yet to castle, but it doesn't see any problems here. This is still well-known theory, and it's totally fine for black. Stockfish gives it less than 2/10 of a pawn in white's favor, even after a deep think. So it's kind of unbelievable that Stockfish could go from this position to being hopelessly lost in just 6 moves. But that is exactly what happens. Okay, we have g3 from white, pretty tame. C takes d4, looking to clear the c5 square for a knight. And white does not solidify his pawn center. He takes with a knight, hitting e6. Okay, knight to c5 defends and looks to potentially jump into e4. We have e takes f6, g takes f6, recaptures with a pawn, interesting decision, supporting a possible pawn push to e5, but weakening the king side a bit more. Bishop e3 now, a5, some queen side expansion, but maybe it would have been a good time to castle, because here comes knight to h4, moving toward the king side, threatening queen to h5 check. But Stockfish has determined that it can castle, which it does on move 13, and thinks that everything will be just fine. But everything is not fine after white's extremely powerful response, f5, after which some of us humans might be thinking, doesn't this just invite the move e5? How does this help white? Well, the point is that you are controlling key squares on black's king side, that is g6 and e6. So that after the move that Stockfish played, which is knight takes d4, white is going to unleash the same powerful move that would have been played even if Stockfish had played e5. It turns out that the best chance for Stockfish was to put the knight on e5 to stop what's coming next. That is a crushing move from white, queen to g4 check. And after only 14 moves from Stockfish, white is already completely winning here. King h8 attempts to tuck the king away, but if there was any illusion of safety, it gets quickly obliterated by white's next move. See if you can spot a crushing tactical sequence here. Take a moment and look at the position. What would you play here as white? Knight to g6 check is the devastating blow to Stockfish's position, after which Stockfish replied king to g7, which just loses material to knight takes f8. But before we continue with the game, we need to consider the obvious recapture, and that is h takes g6, because this is the variation that really demonstrates the brilliancy of white's attack and the depth of calculation it required. Here we have queen to h3 check, king goes to g7, queen to h6 check, supported by the bishop on e3, king to g8, and now f takes g6, threatening mate on h7 with the queen. How are you stopping that? Well, it's not quite over yet because there is knight to f3 check. And you might be thinking that king to f2 is the move here in order to attack the knight, but king to d1 is actually best. You want to keep the king off of the f-file, which will open with check if black defends with knight g5 and white plays bishop takes g5. You can see that when the pawn captures on g5, the rook will come alive along the f-file. So at this point here, black can only really delay mate with the move rook to f7. We have g takes f7 check, king takes f7, queen h7 check, king goes to e8, bishop b5 check. And here you have the choice between playing king to f8 and getting mated with bishop to h6. You can put the queen in the way with queen to d7, Or you can play bishop to d7 and get mated with the following moves: queen g6 check, king f8, and bishop h6 mate. But getting back to the game, in this position, Stockfish, now seeing all the problems associated with taking the knight, just decides to give up material with king to g7. Knight takes f8 now, picking up the rook with check, the king recaptures, c takes d4, Stockfish is down the exchange, and the knight on c5 is threatened. But because mate threats are still looming, Stockfish can't even move the knight, and plays queen to b6 instead, because you have to prevent bishop to b5 check. See, you still have the mating threats involved with both these bishops playing on opposite sides of the board, coming at the king from both directions. Of course, we have d takes c5, which puts Stockfish a whole rook down. The game is effectively over. Queen b4 check is played, forcing a trade of queens for whatever reason. Queens come off the board. The game goes on for a bit, but with such a heavy material deficit, Stockfish is not going to last long. And finally, on move 33, after rook takes h7 check, Stockfish finally throws in the towel and is actually giving a forced mate here for white in 9 moves. So I hope you enjoyed that tactical masterpiece. And now for the big reveal. Who is the powerful opponent who could do such a thing to the mighty Stockfish, forcing it into a completely hopeless position by move 14? Well, it's none other than the great Komodo, another powerful chess engine, which is actually a bit weaker than Stockfish, but in bullet games like the one you just witnessed, it can win from time to time. And what spectacular wins they are. Unlike the longer games between these top engines, which almost always end in draws, these bullet games produce some beautiful attacking sequences that do quite often lead to forced mate. And don't think that just because these games are fast, that the quality of play is not extremely high. Indeed, even in bullet, these engines are much stronger than any human could ever hope to be. So far, I have made these engines, Stockfish and Komodo, play about 1,000 bullet games against each other, and this game is special, being the shortest out of all of those games, and containing a truly incredible attack. But it is not necessarily the most impressive of those games. I have yet to even begin going through all of them, so you can rest assured when I find more brilliancies, I will be bringing them to you, so you are going to want to go ahead and subscribe to see everything that's coming your way. I also like to cover the best games of Magnus Carlsen and other top players, but the more I analyze these engine games, the more human games, even by the top players, sort of start to look silly in comparison. We truly live in an amazing time where anyone can generate masterpieces like this on their laptop in only a few minutes by playing these awesome engines against each other. So thank you for watching. Please subscribe. I will see you on the next video.